что пока сделать. Ладно, так вот. Нормально играет, значит, да.
If you make melodies like this, but want your melodies to sound like this.
Hey everybody, Tony Winston here for Jazz Piano College. A viewer has asked me to make a deep dive into the diminished scale. So I'm going to play the bridge of Have You Met Miss Jones, and I'm going to use the diminished scale on every 5 chord. That's every dominant 7th chord. So let's see, the song starts, how does that song go? All right, how's that song go now? All right, here we go. Played a lot of diminished scales in there on the 2-5-1s. Now, down in the description, I have a PDF, and it's real easy. Just hit the link, and the PDF will come right up. No, going to a website or anything like that. And there are 3 pages. The first page I'm going to go over right now, and it's called Diminished Scale Technology. Okay, the diminished scale is an 8-note scale. And the recurring pattern is, and let's see, I'm going to start on C sharp, I think. The recurring pattern is you go a whole step, then a half step, then a half step, a whole, a half. All right, just like that. And you will see that if you started on this note, you get the exact same scale, right? Started up here, you're going to get the same scale. So there's really only 3 diminished scales. The one that starts here, the one that starts there, and the one that starts there. By the time you get here, they repeat. Okay, letter B. The diminished scale works well with diminished chords and dominant 7th chords. C sharp, diminished chord. All right, and I was just reading this book, for a long time, I think from the 1960s. Yeah, 1964. And he's got a whole chapter. It's a short chapter, but he's got a whole chapter devoted to the diminished scale. And what he says is, these are not connecting tones, these little notes in between. They're actually part of the chord, because in any diminished chord, you can add a note that's a whole step above one of the chord tones. And you hear this all the time, jazz stands you. Right there, and the step above that chord tone, right? And other step above a chord tone, like I could put this note in because it's a whole step above. It might not sound. It's another one that would work. Yeah, see, I put a whole step above the D. In fact, if you want to a whole step above this one and all of them like this, like that, and that's a legal chord. I mean, it sounds pretty good. It's really too rich to use in almost any situation, but right? Okay, that's legal harmony, but not recommended. But adding a couple of those whole tone extensions. Excuse me, whole tone extensions, they call them. So, like we're saying now in letter B, the diminished scale works well with diminished chords. And all these notes that are not chord tones are the chord tone. Okay? And think about this now. Suppose it was a C seventh chord, and this note was the flat 9. You still have that diminished chord, so this is why over a dominant 7th chord, the diminished sounds good. And you can think of it as starting right on C with a half step, or your theoretically correct diminished scale that starts on the flat and goes a whole step. It's easier just to think about starting with a half step. Third, start with a whole step. Okay, you're starting place. Because a dominant chord, same scale, but from the root you start with step. Okay, and I'll just give you a couple of quick examples here on the second page of my PDF file down there. I have this little line here. And then here's the diminished scale. All right, and I'll be giving you lots more examples. Okay, the letter C, now back on the scale from C sharp. It says D flat, but C sharp, D flat, whatever. E, F sharp, G, A, B flat. Right. For a dominant 7th flat 9 chord, build the same scale from the flat 9. Or build the scale from the root, but start with a half step, because it gives you this. Letter E. Notes that are a whole step above any chord tone may be added to the diminished chord. Right, the diminished chord, and you just go chord tone, you can add those notes to the chord, and like I say, many jazz. I think of another one. No, not right off the bat.
Так нет писать там надо. Нет писать надо.
So you got a diminished chord, whole step above A. That's the song Bewitched. There are only 3 scales. So, the first one I ever learned, and I just kind of figured this out on my own. I don't know how I came up with it. I realized that this was to know. And you see, I'm starting with a half step here. It's really the C sharp diminished or the E diminished scale. It worked good over a C dominant chord. And I came up with little pattern. I did stuff like this. I'm 50 years ago. And stupid, I just never explored it in other keys, because I would have quickly realized that, if you do this scale, so if you, you're miles ahead. Anyway, the first one that goes with a C dominant chord, and I'm going to start on a C, and I thought of it as this little shape right here, and then kind of almost the V of that shape, you've got 2 white blacks and a white, kind of like a photographic negative of it. The same kind of little shape there. Oh, sorry, wrong chord there. It doesn't fit that chord. And of course, you see it has the flat 9. It has the 9. It has the 3rd of the C7 chord. The 5th has the 6th, or we'll call that the 13th. The dominant 7th, or the flat 7. So it works out really nicely. And then this kind of leads you to the next scale with like a half step. Well, it didn't do it that way. So you got a half step going to A, the F major there. Or let me see if I can make it work out another way. See, half step going into it. That doesn't always work out that way, but many times it does. And that's a desirable thing, from going from one's chromatic connection. Chromatic connection. We've got this one for the C sharp diminished chord, or the C dominant. Let's go up a half step and look at D diminished. Okay, it starts with 4 white keys. That's good. We've got another little shape there, and then scale, so 4 more notes. Okay, these scales, usually just using fingers 1, 2, and 3 will get you there. See, only 3 fingers. Look, Mom, only 3 fingers. All right, next one, E flat diminished. All right, so we've got kind of that same little kind of shape here, and then look, 4 white keys. All right, so. And like I said, if you just lowered the bottom note there, you'd have D7. Think about that E flat again as the flat 9, and that's the scale for the chord, right? All right. And the one we did before was D diminished, right? Started with those 4 white keys, then this. That would work for D, or it would work for any of the illegitimate, I don't think Barry Harris called them ill siblings, but anyway, they're related. D, but E, and B flat, all using the same scale. Right, so that means a 2-5-1, 4 different keys, you're going to use the same diminished scale. So, the diminished scale I'm going to be focusing on is this one. To me, I don't know, that's just the easiest one for some reason, because it's 2, I don't know. But we use it for C dominant, E flat dominant, F sharp, and A. It's the same scale, different spots of that scale. And if I was doing 2-5-1s, the 5 chord is the C, so a 2-5-1 in F is going to. All right, to F. Now, up third is A flat. A flat is going to start with a B flat minor, and E flat. There it is. There. And we end up on A flat. Okay. Now B. All right. Nobody. But if you know this diminished scale, it'll be a hell of a lot easier. So that. And look, B is an easy scale for the fingers. Back to B. Let's do that one again. Okay, and all. And if you're using a rootless voicing, like this, chord, like that, see the minor to A7 with a flat 9 to D. So right there you can see the diminished chord, and it can't remember which scale to use, just take any one of those step. Right? If you're thinking D now, you can go a half step. Wait a minute. What chord am I playing? Oh yeah, I'm in D. I'm on A7th. All right. So you can look at the diminished chord, whole step from any of the notes in the diminished chord. Then you start there and do a half step, do a chord tone, and okay. Now, you've heard this little chord thing here. So I'm going to do a 2-5-1 in F, but I'm going to do it real fancy. I'm going to do G minor like this. 2. All right, you don't have to do that. Just play a G minor. And then for my C chord, I'm going to do this. You got to admit, that sounds pretty damn slick. Or you could go down. It's like this. You could go going down. And when you practice these things, don't do what I did and just go all the time. Learn what is this, okay? Now, give F. I've got a C chord here for my dominant chord. I'm putting the flat 9 in right there. Every note, right? All right, so in fact, everything is part of that diminished chord, which is a whole step extension. All right, this is just a great chord voicing for a C chord. Thirds. So up in minor thirds means chord here. C, E flat, G flat, A. 3 major triads. 4 actually. And ends up right in F. And you don't have to play all 4 of them, you could go. Oops, where'd I go wrong? Oh. Yeah, I was. See, instead of doing that one, sometimes I move up there ahead of time and then go up. All right, it's not as dissonant, but it's a kind of a cool doing. And then, what was it? Yeah. Yeah, there's only 3 sets of these. You got the first one. half step. What the hell is it? And then when you get to here, you're back where you started, you see? So if you learn and go maybe 2 octaves worth, that way you really cover it, and if you can come to, then you'll be way ahead. See, this is where we'll screw up. 3 came from Steven Anderson, and he, I don't know if he's still camp, jazz summer camp for high school students. Went to that camp and printed out material here, so I just took it and used it as my own, you know. That's the way things are in the age. But anyway, he's got some great diminished patterns here, and I just now noticed up in the like all the different chords these patterns will work with. And I see it's C diminished, B flat diminished, or the 4 dominants that will have those diminished chords. 9, so flat 7, F sharp 7, and A7. So these patterns will work over any of those 8 chords.